The Paleozoic era is the first era of the Phanerozoic eon. It began about 541 million years ago and lasted approximately 290 million years. It is divided into 6 smaller geologic periods. Today, we will look just at the Cambrian period. The Cambrian period lasted about 55.6 million years. There was an overall global warming trend as the pre-Cambrian ice age receded. This allowed for more oxygen in the seas. This is what the continents looked like about 540 million years ago. Prior to the Cambrian period, there was a supercontinent, Rodinia, and during this time it broke apart. By mid-Cambrian period, it had divided itself into 2 continents, Gondwana near the South Pole and Laurentia near the equator. See if you can identify the continents on this map. During the Cambrian period, all life was in the ocean. It was also the beginning of the first multicellular organisms. Let's look at some of the animals that were on our timeline. First at the bottom are the beginning of worms, sea worms. They had bristles and long legs from their sides that they would use to burrow into the mud. By doing this, they were able to mix oxygen into the mud. We also had the early forms of mollusks. The picture of the mollusk with the conical shell is called a sonella. It was a single-shelled, limpet-like animal. We also had the beginning of echinoderms. Echinoderms are spiny-skinned animals. They are often 5-braid bodies with plates that are below the skin. Some of these species develop spines. They are the early ancestors for our starfish and sea urchins. They would suck up water through a tube into tiny tube feet with suckers, and they would use these for walking, gripping, or breathing. Next, we had the beginning of crustaceans. The early crustaceans were like microscopic clams with a 2-valve shell. They would have 2 antennae and forked limbs. We also had the beginning of sea sponges. They were very bag-like. They would be opened at one end, and they would anchor to the seabed at the other end. They had tiny whip-like flagella that would help to channel water and food particles through it. There were also these little tiny creatures called graptolites. They would float near the surface of the water in colonies in like little strings, and on the strings were like little cups, and within each cup was a little animal. Now the animals were soft-bodied, so there are not many fossils of the animals themselves. However, scientists have found fossils of the cup-like strings, and the cups had like a jagged edge similar to that of a hacksaw blade. Bivalves also started to appear. A bivalve is very similar to a mollusk, but the 2 sides of the shells are the same size. We also began to see the beginning of seaweed and algae. One type of algae that has appeared during this time is called ulva. It was a green, shallow water seaweed. 2 other significant animals developed during this time period. One was the first jellyfish. We will talk in detail more about jellyfish later in this presentation. And also, this was known as the kingdom of the trilobites. So we will talk a little bit more about what a trilobite is in a few minutes. This is a fossilized brachiopod from the Cambrian period. Brachiopods are a type of a bivalve. It really is quite amazing to think that the jellyfish has been on planet Earth for all these millions of years, and they really haven't changed a lot over time. Their body is a bell-shaped body, and underneath they have a mouth that they can use to eat and discard waste from. They also use the mouth to squirt water to help them propel forward. They have tentacles that hang down from their body that have stingers in them that they can use to sting and paralyze their prey. Jellyfish can live in both warm and cold waters. A lot of jellyfish are clear, but others also are in different colors, such as bright pinks, yellows, blues, and purple, and some are even luminescent. Even today, there are many different species of jellyfish throughout the world. One of the most prevalent animals during this time was the trilobites, thus the name of the Cambrian period, the age of the trilobites. Trilobites were a type of arthropod and are related to crabs, insects, and spiders. They had a hard outside body with jointed legs. They lived on the bottom of the sea, and they would dig in the mud for food. When they were frightened, they would curl up, kind of like a woodlice. They were in all different sizes, some very large and some very small. If we look at our timeline, the red line that goes up through this timeline is kind of like the lifeline of the trilobites. As you can see, the trilobites proliferated the entire oceans. They lasted on Earth for about 350 million years before they went extinct. They grew to be enormous size. By the end of the Cambrian period, their lifeline had peaked. By the end of the Cambrian period, we had another ice age. There was also a mass extinction at this time. Although scientists don't exactly know why, there have been many theories over the years to what happened. One theory was that there was a sharp decrease in the oxygen levels in the ocean, and there was an increase in a poisonous hydrogen sulfide gas, although nobody can exactly explain why that ever happened. We will have to continue our story with the Ordovician period next, and to find out what happened to the trilobites.